Mom guilt. It's not just a feeling, it's a way of life for so many of us. From the moment you wake up, it's there, whispering in your ear. You didn't wake up early enough, you didn't pack a healthy lunch, you snapped at your toddler again. It doesn't matter what we do, it always feels like we're falling short. And even when we manage to check every box, homemade meals, quality playtime, and a spotless house, there's this lingering feeling that it's still not enough. Why is that? Why are we always blaming ourselves? And more importantly, how do we break free from this relentless cycle? Today, we're diving deep into the roots of mom guilt, the emotional toll it takes, and how we can start reclaiming our lives from its grip. Because let's face it, this isn't sustainable. Let's take a step back, way back, to the 1950s. It was the era of the ideal American family. Suburban homes, white picket fences, and stay-at-home moms who seemed to have it all figured out. But behind those picture-perfect images, many women were silently struggling. Betty Friedan, in her book The Feminine Mystique, called it the problem that has no name. These women felt unfulfilled, isolated, and ashamed to admit it. Society told them they should be happy. They had everything they were told to want. Their days were filled with loneliness, depression, and what Friedan described as a dull ache of emptiness. And how did they cope? They turned to things like Mother's Little Helper, a nickname for tranquilizers prescribed to numb their dissatisfaction. Fast forward to today, and it's easy to think we've moved past those struggles. Women have careers, we're more connected than ever, and we're raising kids with more empathy than previous generations. But that feeling, that nagging sense of guilt and isolation, it's still here. Only now we call it mom guilt. Mom guilt is more than an emotion. It's a thief. It steals our joy, our confidence, and even our health. Studies show that 78% of moms feel guilt at least once a week, with many reporting it daily. And it's not just a mental burden, it's physical. Chronic guilt has been linked to anxiety, depression, and even heart disease. Imagine this. You've been up since 6 a.m., juggling work, school drop-offs, and household chores. By the time dinner rolls around, you're exhausted. You heat up chicken nuggets for your kids, and while they eat, you sit down with your laptop to catch up on emails. But instead of feeling relieved that dinner is done, you're consumed with guilt. Should I have cooked something healthier? Am I a bad mom for working instead of playing with them? Sound familiar? That's mom guilt in action. It convinces us that we're never doing enough, no matter how much we actually do. So, where does this guilt come from? Let's break it down. First, there's internal guilt. This is the voice inside your head that whispers, "You're not enough." It's fueled by our own expectations and insecurities. Maybe you grew up in a household where perfection was the standard, and now you hold yourself to those same impossible standards. Then there's external guilt. This comes from the outside world, family members, friends, and yes, social media. Think about the last time you scrolled through Instagram. How many times did you see a mom posting about her perfectly packed bento box lunches or her kids happily doing crafts? And how many times did you think, why can't I be more like that? Here's a shocking stat. 82% of moms feel judged by other moms, and it's not just online. At school, drop-off, on the playground, even at family gatherings, everyone seems to have an opinion on how we're raising our kids. There's a term I've heard floating around lately, the hospital fantasy. It's the idea that being in a hospital, away from the chaos of daily life, might actually feel relaxing. I know it sounds absurd, but let me paint the picture. You're in a quiet hospital room wrapped in a warm blanket with nothing to do but watch TV. No dishes to wash, no tantrums to manage, no emails to answer. Just you, alone, in peace. For so many moms, this fantasy isn't about wanting to be sick. It's about craving a break, a moment to breathe. And isn't that heartbreaking? That the only way we imagine getting rest is by being in a hospital? Social media is supposed to connect us, but for moms, it often does the opposite. Studies show that moms who spend more time on social media report higher levels of guilt and anxiety. Why? Because we're constantly comparing our worst moments to someone else's highlight reel. You see a mom posting about her family hike, and all you can think about is the tantrum your toddler threw that morning. And let's not forget the influencers. Their posts are curated, edited, and often sponsored. But when we see their perfect lives, it's hard not to feel like we're failing. Here's a tip. Unfollow anyone who makes you feel less than. Fill your feed with people who inspire you, not people who drain you. So, how do we fight back against mom guilt? One of the most powerful antidotes is connection. Sharing your struggles, hearing someone say, "Me too," can be life-changing. Think about the last time you vented to a friend. Didn't it feel like a weight was lifted? That's the power of community. When we come together, we realize we're not alone, and that's where healing begins. Breaking free from mom guilt starts with small, intentional steps. Reframe your thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'm failing," replace it with, "I'm learning." Set boundaries. Say no to the things that drain you and yes to what truly matters. Celebrate small wins. Every bedtime story, every hug, every moment counts. Here's a challenge. At the end of each day, write down one thing you did well. It doesn't have to be big, just something you're proud of. As Susan Sarandon said, we all need a witness, someone who sees us, hears us, and reminds us that we're enough. So call a friend, share your story, because when we come together, we're stronger. And that's how we start to break the cycle of guilt for ourselves and for the next generation.